The observation deck of Galactic Coalition Military Academy stretched wide enough to hold 3,000 cadets comfortably. Today, every seat was filled. The massive windows showed the darkness of space beyond, with distant stars providing tiny points of light against the void. Inside, the air hummed with excitement and the mixed sounds of dozens of different species talking among themselves. Cadet Daehyun Kim stood quietly in the preparation area below the main deck. He wore the standard gray training uniform of the academy, nothing special or decorated. His black hair was cut short in military style. At 19 years old and standing at average human height, he looked unremarkable compared to the giants and warriors from other worlds. Next to him, Cadet Minji Choi checked her datapad one more time. She was 20, sharp-eyed, and wore her hair pulled back tight. "They are already laughing up there," she said quietly. "I can hear them through the speakers." Corporal Jiwon Park walked over to them. She was their instructor, a woman in her late 20s with calm eyes that missed nothing. "Let them laugh," she said simply. "Just do what you have been trained to do." Up in the observation deck, the alien cadets were indeed laughing. The Vraxian section was the loudest. These reptilian warriors stood 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and scales that could deflect small weapons fire. Their home world had gravity twice that of Earth, and they were born fighters. Thrazkor was the biggest of the Vraxian cadets. His dark green scales gleamed under the station lights. He leaned over to his fellow cadets and spoke loudly enough for others to hear. "The humans are next. This should be entertaining. Have you seen how small they are? How weak their muscles? They come from a world so soft that their bones break easily." Laughter rippled through the surrounding seats. A massive Torgon cadet named Gromath joined in. The Torgons looked like bears crossed with bulls covered in thick fur and dense muscle. Gromath's homeworld was freezing cold, and his people were built to survive and hunt in the harshest winters. "I heard their planet is rated only Class 3 on the danger scale," Gromath said with a deep, rumbling laugh. "My world is Class 7. What can they possibly show us about combat?" A crystalline being floated nearby, its body made of geometric shapes that glowed with soft blue light. This was Velcora Prime 7, one of the synthetic species. They did not laugh, but their voice carried clearly when they spoke. "I have accessed the human physical data from the database. Compared to 70% of coalition species, humans rank in the bottom category for strength, speed, natural armor, and sensory capability. This demonstration appears inefficient." More laughter. Some cadets from other species looked uncomfortable with the mockery, but they said nothing. Humans had only joined the coalition 15 years ago, and they were still proving themselves. At the front of the observation deck on a raised platform, General Huan Kang sat in his command chair. He was 60 years old, a human with gray hair and a face marked by old scars. He wore his uniform perfectly, with medals from the Outer Rim conflicts displayed on his chest. The general had fought in wars that most of these cadets had only read about in training materials. His aide, a nervous insectoid Quellan named Tixra, leaned close. "General, perhaps we should postpone. The attitude up here is very negative. This could humiliate our human cadets." General Kang did not take his eyes off the training floor below. A small smile touched his lips. "No postponement," he said quietly. "Watch." The lights in the observation deck dimmed slightly. A voice came over the speakers. "Attention all cadets. The quarterly combat assessment demonstrations will now continue. Next presentation, Human Contingent Earth Military Standard Training Protocols." Groans and laughter filled the deck. Thrazkor stood up, his forearms crossed.
"Finally something funny to break up the day."
Down on the training floor, the massive space cleared. Holographic generators along the walls hummed to life, ready to create whatever environment the demonstration required. Corporal Park walked out into the center, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She looked up at the thousands of watching cadets. Her expression showed nothing, no anger at their mockery, no nervousness. "I am Corporal Jiwon Park, Human Combat Instructor. Today we will demonstrate standard Earth military training as practiced by all human soldiers." "Standard?" Velcora Prime 7's voice came from the speakers. The alien had activated the public communication channel. "You mean basic level training? The minimum requirement?" "Correct," Park answered simply. More laughter. Thrazakor's voice boomed out. "This will be educational, Corporal." "Educational on what not to be." Park nodded slightly. "Indeed, Cadet Thrazkor." "Indeed it will be." She turned and gestured toward the preparation area. Cadet Kim stepped forward. Daehyun walked out onto the training floor. The laughter grew louder when the cadets saw him. He looked so ordinary, not muscled like a warrior, not tall like a Vraxian, not built like a tank like the Torgons, just a normal young man who could have been standing in any human city looking average. "That is their demonstrator?" Gromath asked in disbelief. "I could break him with one hand." Park's voice cut through the noise. "Cadet Kim will perform a standard obstacle course as used in basic human military training. No genetic modifications, no physical enhancements, no special equipment. What you will see is what any human can do with proper training." She turned to the control panel and began entering commands. The holographic generators responded, creating a course that appeared in glowing outlines before solidifying into a physical simulation. The course included climbing walls, strength tests, puzzle sections, and endurance runs. Thrazkor accessed the course data on his personal screen. "This course is used for all coalition species," he said. "The current record is 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I set that record myself last month." He looked down at Daehyun with clear contempt. "Let us see how long the human takes. I bet 10 credits he fails within the first 2 obstacles." "I take that bet," Gromath laughed. "I say he fails at the first one." Betting pools formed quickly among the cadets. No one bet on the human succeeding. The only question was how badly he would fail. General Kang watched all of this from his platform. His age shifted nervously. "Sir, this is becoming cruel." "Is it?" the general asked softly. He leaned back in his chair, that small smile still on his face. "Or is it about to become the most important lesson these cadets learn all year?" Down on the floor, Daehyun removed his jacket slowly. Underneath, he wore a simple black training shirt. He performed basic stretches, touching his toes, rotating his shoulders, rolling his neck. To the watching aliens, it looked like he was stalling, afraid to begin. "He is scared," someone shouted from the deck. Park checked her chronometer. "Course is active. Cadet Kim, you may begin when ready." Daehyun looked up at the first obstacle. It was a 50-meter vertical wall with magnetic panels that randomly switched polarity. Climbers had to constantly adjust their grip and path. It was designed to test strength, problem-solving, and adaptability all at once. He studied the wall for exactly 3 seconds. Then he stepped forward and jumped, catching the first handhold. The observation deck went quiet, waiting to see him fail. General Kang leaned forward slightly in his chair, his eyes focused. "Now," he whispered to himself. "Now they begin to learn." The chronometer started counting. Daehyun began to climb. Daehyun climbed the magnetic wall with movements that looked wrong to the watching aliens. Vraxians climbed with raw power, their forearms giving them constant stability. Torgons simply muscled their way up, ignoring the magnetic shifts through sheer grip strength. But Daehyun kept moving positions, sometimes hanging from just one hand, while his other hand searched for the next hold. His body swung and shifted constantly. "Look at him struggle," Gromath called out. "He can barely hold on." But Corporal Park was watching the chronometer. And so was General Kang. Daehyun reached the top of the wall in 47 seconds. It was an average time for most species, nothing impressive. But the biomonitor readings on the display showed something interesting. His energy expenditure was 40% lower than normal for this obstacle. Park made a note on her datapad but said nothing. Daehyun dropped from the top of the wall, landing smoothly, and moved to the second obstacle without pausing. This one made the aliens sit up with interest. It was a pure strength test. An 800-kilogram weight block sat at one end of a 30-meter field. The task was simple: move it to the other end. Gromath had completed this test in 12 seconds, using his massive strength to push the block like it was nothing. Thrazkor had done it in 15 seconds with his four-armed advantage. Daehyun weighed 75 kilograms. He stood in front of the block that weighed more than 10 times his body weight. The comparison looked ridiculous. The laughter started again. "This will be good," Thrazkor said. But Daehyun did not immediately try to push. Instead, he walked around the block slowly, examining it from all sides. He looked at the field surface, testing it with his foot. He checked the block's edges and corners. 10 seconds passed. The aliens thought he was stalling again. Then he positioned himself at a specific corner of the block. He put his shoulder against it at an angle, braced his legs, and began to rock the block, not pushing straight but creating a rocking motion. The block shifted slightly. He kept the rhythm going, and the block began to tilt and slide, tilt and slide. It took him 43 seconds to move the block across the field. Much slower than the powerful aliens, But when he finished, his bio readings showed something unusual. His heart rate had barely increased. His muscle strain was minimal. He had used technique instead of strength, and his body was not exhausted. Velcora Prime 7 noticed this anomaly on their data screen. They ran the numbers again, thinking there must be a sensor error. The readings remained the same. The third obstacle was different. It was a maze that reconfigured itself constantly. The walls moved and changed position while you were inside it. Most cadets solved it through trial and error, using their speed to run through multiple attempts quickly, or their strength to simply break through walls until they found the exit. Daehyun entered the maze. The walls were solid holographic projections impossible to see through or break. He walked at a normal pace, turning left, then right, then left again. He never hesitated at intersections. He never hit a dead end. 89 seconds later, he emerged from the exit. The observation deck grew quieter. That was fast, very fast. How had he done it? Minji, watching from the sidelines, smiled to herself. She knew. Daehyun had read the environmental cues. The maze needed air circulation for safety, so there were slight air currents. The exit had to vent somewhere, creating a pressure difference. The walls, though they moved, followed temperature patterns based on the holographic generator positions. Daehyun had not memorized anything. He had observed and adapted. By the time the full course was complete, Daehyun's final time appeared on the display. 53 minutes and 18 seconds. Exactly in the middle of the coalition average. The 50th percentile. Not impressive. Not terrible. Just average. The laughter returned, though it was slightly less confident now. See? Grometh said. Completely average. Nothing special. Thrazkor nodded. I knew it. Humans are middle tier at best. But some of the other cadets were looking at the detailed biodata. A few had noticed the same thing Velcora had noticed. The human's efficiency numbers were strange. He had performed at average levels, but his body had not been pushed hard to do it. Corporal Park stood in the center of the floor again. She waited for the noise to die down. That completes the standard coalition course demonstration, she said clearly. Cadet Kim performed at average coalition levels as expected. Human physiology is not optimized for peak performance in any single category. Finally, she admits it, someone shouted. Park continued as if there had been no interruption. That was Phase 1. We will now proceed to Phase 2, the human protocol. The observation deck fell quieter. Curiosity mixed with the remaining contempt. What was the human protocol? Park turned to the control panel and began entering new parameters. The holographic generators responded, and the training floor transformed. The clean, climate-controlled environment dissolved. In its place appeared a jungle, but not a normal jungle. This was a recreation of a Class 7 death world environment, the kind that made even experienced soldiers nervous. The temperature spiked immediately to 45 degrees Celsius. Humidity flooded the air. Simulated hostile creatures moved in the undergrowth, their movements programmed to hunt and kill. The terrain became unstable, with ground that could collapse without warning. Several alien cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not a standard training environment. This was a survival scenario. Park's voice remained calm. The previous demonstration showed human performance under optimal conditions. Clean air, stable temperature, solid ground, no threats. But humans do not train for optimal conditions. We train for the worst conditions. This is what human soldiers face in basic training from the age of 18. Thrazkor stood up again, his pride stung. Our training includes worse environments than this. This proves nothing. General Kang spoke for the first time since the demonstration began. His voice carried easily across the observation deck, even though he spoke quietly. Then you would not mind joining the demonstration, Cadet Thrazkor? A direct comparison would be educational for everyone. The general's words were phrased as a question, but every cadet knew it was actually a command. Thrazkor's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of stress in Vraxians. But his pride would not let him back down. I accept, General. Grometh stood as well. I will also participate. Let us show what real warriors can do. Park nodded. Excellent. 3 participants, then. The scenario is a rescue mission. There is a downed pilot 5 kilometers into the hostile zone. You must extract them and return. Combat drones will simulate enemy contact. The environment will include all natural hazards. She pointed to 3 different entry points around the jungle simulation. You will each start from a different position. The course is active in 30 seconds. Daehyun moved to his entry point. He checked his boots, tightened his belt, and rolled his shoulders once. His expression was calm, almost bored. Thrazakor cracked his knuckles on all four hands. He was built for this. Speed, strength, 4 limbs for climbing and fighting. He would crush this course and show the humans their place. Grometh pounded his chest once, a Torgon battle gesture. His thick fur would protect him. His muscles would power through any obstacle, and his endurance was legendary among his people. The countdown reached 0. A tone sounded. All 3 participants entered the jungle simultaneously. The observation deck screen split into 3 views following each participant. The betting pools reformed instantly, but this time there was real interest. Some cadets were even betting on the human, though the odds were heavily against him. General Kang settled back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face. "Watch carefully," he said to his aide. "This is where they start to understand." In the jungle below, 3 very different approaches to the same problem began to unfold, and the alien cadets were about to learn something about humans that no database or file could have taught them. Grometh charged into the jungle like a living tank. His massive body crashed through the undergrowth, snapping branches and crushing plants beneath his weight. The terrain tried to slow him down, but he simply powered through it with raw strength. Within the first 5 minutes, he had covered 400 meters, the fastest initial progress of all 3 participants. But then the jungle's heat began to work against him. Torgons evolved on a frozen world where temperatures rarely rose above 0 degrees Celsius. Their thick fur and dense muscle mass were designed to generate and retain heat. In this 45-degree environment, Grometh's body became a furnace working against itself. Steam rose from his fur. His breathing grew heavier. The biomonitor showed his core temperature climbing into dangerous zones. He was forced to slow down, seeking shade under the thick canopy, his progress grinding to a crawl. Thrazakor used a different approach. With his forearms and natural climbing ability, he took to the trees, moving through the canopy like a scaled acrobat. His speed was impressive, his reptilian body handling the heat better than Grometh's. He covered the first kilometer faster than either of his competitors. Then he hit the low oxygen zone. The course designers had recreated a marsh area, where thick vegetation consumed most of the available oxygen. For smaller species, it was uncomfortable. For Thrazakor's large body with its fast metabolism, it was a crisis. His bio readings spiked. Vraxians needed more oxygen than humans because of their greater muscle mass and higher body temperature. Thrazakor was forced to stop. His breathing labored, waiting for his respiratory system to adapt. Precious minutes ticked away as he sat in the trees trying to catch his breath. Daehyun moved differently than either of them. He did not fight the jungle. He moved through it like he belonged there. When the temperature spiked, he slowed his pace, allowing his body to cool through sweat evaporation. When he felt himself overheating, he found shade and paused for 30 seconds, drinking from his water supply in small sips. In the cold zones where underground springs dropped the temperature to near freezing, he increased his pace, letting his muscles generate heat. He breathed in a controlled rhythm, deep and steady, maximizing his oxygen intake efficiency. The alien cadets watched his bio readings with growing confusion. His heart rate was elevated, yes, but it remained steady, not spiking, not dropping, just elevated and controlled. His stress hormones showed he was working hard, but there was no panic response, no flooding of emergency chemicals that would cause exhaustion later. How is he staying so calm? A Quellan cadet asked. The stress levels should be overwhelming. Velcora Prime 7 ran analysis after analysis. His physiology is adapting in real time. Body temperature regulation through perspiration, controlled breathing for oxygen optimization, metabolic adjustment to environmental changes. It is as if his biology expects hostile conditions. At the 1-kilometer mark, the first combat drones attacked. These were serious training weapons capable of simulated kills. A direct hit would eliminate a participant from the exercise. Grometh saw them coming and roared a challenge. He grabbed a fallen log and swung it like a club, smashing one drone out of the air. His combat skills were magnificent. He destroyed 3 drones in rapid succession with pure aggressive power. But the fight cost him energy he could not spare in this heat. After the drones retreated, he stood gasping, his temperature readings critical. Thrazakor engaged the drones with all 4 arms, his martial training evident in every movement. He was a whirlwind of scaled fury, his strikes precise and devastating. He took out 5 drones without taking a hit. It was beautiful to watch. But the combat in the low oxygen zone pushed his already stressed respiratory system to the limit. Daehyun heard the drones before he saw them. He immediately dropped low and moved into heavy foliage. He did not run. He went still, controlling his breathing until it was nearly silent. The drones passed overhead, their sensors sweeping the area. One drone detected movement and dove toward his position. Daehyun waited until the last second, then rolled aside. The drone crashed into the thick vegetation, its momentum carrying it into a tangle of vines. Before it could extract itself, Daehyun had moved away, hidden again. The observation deck was silent now. The laughter had completely stopped. He is not fighting them, a cadet observed. He is avoiding them. Cowardice, Thraskor's friend muttered, but General Kang shook his head slightly. Not cowardice, efficiency. Why waste energy on a fight you do not need to win? The mission is extraction, not combat. He understands the difference. At the 2-kilometer mark, the terrain became treacherous. Hidden sinkholes waited to swallow the unwary. Poisonous plants released their toxins when disturbed. Simulated predators hunted from ambush positions. Gromath, overheated and exhausted, stepped on unstable ground. He crashed through into a sinkhole, roaring in frustration. It took him 5 minutes to climb out, his fur now caked with mud that made his heat problem even worse. The medical monitors flashed warnings. At 2.3 kilometers, Gromath was forced to tap out. Continuing would risk real injury. The Torgan cadets in the observation deck growled their disappointment, but they understood. Their species was not built for this kind of heat. Thrazakor pushed on, determined. He had recovered some functionality in the oxygen-rich areas and was making good progress again. His pride would not let him quit. A Varaxian warrior did not surrender, but at 3.7 kilometers his body finally rebelled. The combination of heat stress, oxygen deprivation in the earlier zone, and the energy spent in combat created a cascade failure. His movements became sluggish. His decision-making slowed. When he approached what should have been an obvious trap, a simple tripwire connected to simulated explosives, he walked right into it. The simulation registered a critical hit. Thrazakor was eliminated. He stood there in the jungle, all forearms hanging at his sides, his scales dark with stress and shame. He had failed. Only Daehyun remained in the simulation. The observation deck watched in absolute silence as the human continued forward, steady and relentless. At 4 kilometers, Daehyun entered a section where the temperature had dropped to -10 degrees Celsius, a frozen zone created by the environmental generators. He did not have special cold weather gear, just his standard training uniform. He began to shiver. The biomonitors showed his body temperature dropping, but he kept moving and his movement generated heat. His muscles burned energy, warming his blood. His shivering was not panic. It was his body's automatic response, generating heat through rapid muscle contractions. He found the downed pilot dummy at 4.8 kilometers. It was a weighted mannequin representing an injured soldier. Daehyun secured it in a fireman's carry across his shoulders and began the return journey. Now he was carrying an additional 70 kilograms through hostile terrain. His pace slowed, but he did not stop. When he needed rest, he found a defensible position, set the dummy down carefully, and took exactly 3 minutes to drink water and eat a high-calorie ration bar from his supply pack. Then he picked up the dummy and continued. The alien cadets were not mocking anymore. They were calculating, adding up the distance, the environmental changes, the combat encounters avoided, the extraction completed, the return journey in progress. Minji watched the monitors with pride. This was what human training produced. Not the strongest soldier, not the fastest, but the one who kept going. At hour 1 and 40 minutes, Daehyun crossed back into the safe zone. He set the dummy down gently, then sat down himself. Not collapsed, not unconscious. Just sat down heavily, breathing hard, covered in sweat and mud, but alert and aware. His total mission time appeared on the display, 47 minutes and 12 seconds. Thrazakor had been extracted from the simulation and brought to the observation deck. His scales were still dark, his breathing still labored. He watched the human's completion time appear and felt something he rarely experienced, respect earned through witness. General Kang stood up from his command chair. His voice carried across the silent observation deck. Phase 3 will commence in 10 minutes. Participants will have time to hydrate and prepare. A Quellan cadet raised a delicate limb. General, what is Phase 3? General Kang's smile was not kind. It was the smile of a teacher about to deliver the hardest lesson. Phase 3 is a 72-hour continuous operation simulation. Standard duration for human military field exercises. The observation deck erupted in shocked voices. 72 hours? 3 full days without stopping. That exceeded coalition safety protocols. That exceeded the biological limitations of most species. That is impossible, Velcora Prime 7 stated. Coalition regulations prohibit continuous operations beyond 36 hours for biological safety. Coalition regulations, General Kang agreed. Not human regulations. Our protocols allow for 96 hours continuous operations under field conditions. He looked down at Dae-hyun, who was drinking water and eating another ration bar, his expression calm. What you have seen so far is a human performing adequately in difficult conditions. What you are about to see is why the Coalition learned to value Earth's contribution to its military forces. You are about to witness what humans were evolved to do better than any other known species. He paused, letting the silence build. You are about to see a human endure. The 10-minute break felt too short for what was coming. The observation deck buzzed with nervous energy. Cadets from dozens of species discussed what they had just witnessed and what was about to happen. 72 hours, 3 full days of continuous operations. It seemed insane. Velcora Prime 7 floated to the front of their section, their crystalline body pulsing with agitated light. I must object officially, General Kang. This exceeds all established safety parameters. Biological entities require rest cycles. This is not training, this is torture. General Kang did not seem offended. Your objection is noted, Cadet Velcora. However, this is standard human military training. Every human soldier completes exercises of this duration. What you call torture, we call Tuesday. A ripple of uneasy laughter went through the human cadets in the observation deck. They knew he was not joking. Corporal Park's voice came over the speakers. Phase 3 parameters are as follows. Deep reconnaissance mission through hostile territory. 72 hours continuous operation. Minimal resources. Periodic combat encounters. 0 opportunity for proper rest. Participants must remain mission-capable throughout. She paused. Volunteers? Thrazkor, still recovering from his previous failure, stood up. His pride demanded he try again. I volunteer. A Quellan named Tixra raised one of his delicate limbs. I will volunteer. My species is known for endurance among the insectoid races. Velcora Prime 7 surprised everyone. I will also participate. Synthetic species do not require sleep in the biological sense. This will prove the superiority of constructed life over evolved biology. And Dae-hyun, of course. He simply stood up from where he had been sitting, ready. 4 participants. 4 completely different biologies. The comparison would be stark. The simulation environment loaded. It was less visually dramatic than the jungle, but far more insidious. A rocky wasteland with cave systems where temperatures fluctuated wildly. Oxygen levels varied by location, and hostiles could appear from any direction. The mission: gather intelligence from 6 different locations spread across the terrain, all while evading or defeating enemy patrols. The chronometer started. Hour 0. For the first 12 hours, all 4 participants performed well. Thrazkor's combat skills shone during enemy encounters. He was a beautiful fighter, all 4 arms working in coordination, his strikes precise and powerful. Tixra's sensory abilities detected threats early. His compound eyes seeing in spectrums others could not. Velcora moved with perfect efficiency, their energy form requiring no wasted motion. Dae-hyun maintained steady progress, occasionally stopping to consume rations and water. The observation deck began to relax. Perhaps this would not be as dramatic as feared. Then hour 12 passed. Hour 15, hour 18, Thrazkor began to slow. Vraxian biology demanded a 6-hour deep sleep cycle every 20 hours. It was not optional. It was hardwired into their nervous system. He was fighting it using every technique he knew to stay alert, but his body was screaming for sleep. At hour 19, his reaction times had slowed by 8%. At hour 22, he made his first tactical error, walking into an ambush he should have easily spotted. The simulated enemies tagged him. He was eliminated. He stood in the simulation, swaying slightly, all 4 arms trembling with exhaustion. I cannot, he whispered. My body will not obey. He was extracted. In the observation deck, the other Vraxian cadets were quiet. They understood. You could not fight biology. Tixra pushed on. Quellins had amazing endurance for their size and their metabolism was efficient, but every 4 hours he had to stop and consume significant amounts of food. His high-speed metabolism burned through energy reserves rapidly. At hour 38, he ran out of the specialized nutrition his species required. Standard rations could keep him alive, but could not provide the specific amino acid chains his biology needed. By hour 42, hunger-induced weakness made his limbs shake. He made the smart choice and withdrew before he hurt himself. Velcora Prime 7 continued with machine-like efficiency. No sleep needed, no food required. Their energy matrix powered them continuously. They seemed to be proving their point about synthetic superiority, but the observers started noticing something around hour 45. Velcora's movements were becoming slightly less fluid. Their processing speed, normally instantaneous, showed tiny delays. What was happening? Corporal Park explained to the watching cadets. Synthetic species do not need sleep, but they do need energy. Velcora's type draws power from ambient stellar radiation. In environments with open sky and star exposure, they can recharge continuously, but we are simulating underground and heavily overcast conditions. They are slowly depleting their energy reserves. By hour 51, Velcora's movements had slowed noticeably. Their light pulsed dimmer. At hour 54, they made a decision that surprised everyone. I request withdrawal, Velcora said calmly. Continuing operation will result in core crystallization damage. This is a training exercise. Permanent damage to my matrix is not acceptable. Withdrawal is logical. They were extracted. Daehyun was alone in the simulation. The observation deck watched with an attention that bordered on obsession. How long could he last? Hour 48 arrived. Daehyun was obviously tired. His movements had slowed. He stumbled occasionally. His reaction times were measurably worse than his starting performance. But he did not stop. Every few hours he would find a defensible position, wedge himself into a corner where nothing could approach unseen, and close his eyes. Not for long. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes at most. Then his eyes would open. He would stand up, eat something, drink water, and continue. The alien cadets could not understand it. Those sleep periods are too short, a Torgon medic observed. He cannot be getting restorative rest from such brief intervals. But he was. Human sleep architecture allowed for something called polyphasic rest. While not ideal, a human could extract functional rest from multiple short sleep periods. The body entered light sleep quickly, grabbed what recovery it could, and returned to wakefulness. It was not comfortable. It was not healthy long-term. But it worked. Hour 55, hour 60, hour 65. Daehyun kept moving. His biosigns were concerning but stable. Heart rate elevated but steady. Stress hormones high but not spiking. Body temperature regulated. Hydration maintained. Caloric intake sufficient. Most remarkably, his tactical decision-making remained sound. Tired, yes. Slower, yes. But he was not making stupid mistakes. He was not panicking. He avoided unnecessary combat. He chose efficient routes. He completed each intelligence-gathering objective methodically. General Kang provided commentary for the cadets. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. Our ancestors would track prey animals for days across the African plains, not running them down with speed, not overpowering them with strength, simply following them relentlessly until the prey animal collapsed from exhaustion. He pulled up historical data on the observation deck screens. Ancient human hunts. Modern ultra-marathons where humans ran for hundreds of kilometers. Military operations where human soldiers held positions for weeks with minimal rest. Our biology is not optimized for peak performance, he continued. It is optimized for continued performance, for refusing to stop, for enduring past the point where other species must yield to biological necessity. Hour 70 arrived. Daehyun was a mess. His uniform was soaked with sweat. His face was drawn with fatigue. His eyes were bloodshot. He moved like every muscle hurt because they probably did. But he moved. He completed the 6th and final intelligence objective. He began the extraction to the safe zone. Hour 71. The observation deck was absolutely silent. Every eye was locked on the screen showing the human's slow, painful progress toward the finish point. Hour 71 and 43 minutes. Daehyun crossed into the safe zone. He had completed the mission. He set down his pack carefully. He drank the last of his water. He sat down on the ground, not collapsing but lowering himself with control. Then he just sat there breathing, The simulation ended. The environment dissolved back into the training floor. Medical personnel rushed forward, but Daehyun waved them off. "I am fine," he said, his voice hoarse. "Just need food and sleep." His biosigns were reviewed. Extreme fatigue, yes. Dehydration despite his water discipline. Muscle strain throughout his body. But nothing dangerous. Nothing that would not heal with rest and nutrition. In the observation deck, one cadet began a slow rhythmic clicking, the Quellan gesture of respect. Another joined. Then another. Within moments, the entire deck was filled with the sounds of respect from dozens of species, each using their own cultural gesture. Except for a small group of cadets in the back section. They were still whispering among themselves, unconvinced. General Kang saw them. He had expected this. There were always doubters. He stood up and walked to the front of the command platform. "I see some of you remain skeptical. You think what you saw was exceptional, special, the result of unique genetics or enhanced training beyond normal parameters." He smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Corporal Park, bring in the others." The doors opened. 15 more human cadets entered the observation deck, filing down to the training floor. Young and old, large and small, different backgrounds, different fitness levels. They stood in a line looking up at the watching aliens. "Choose any of them," General Kang said. "Design any test within safety parameters. You will see that what Cadet Kim demonstrated is not exceptional for humans. It is standard." Grex, a senior Torgon cadet, stood up slowly. Unlike many of his species mates who had been mocking the humans earlier, he looked genuinely curious now. "General, I wish to understand, not to mock. May I design a test?" "Please do, Cadet Grex," General Kang replied. Grex moved to a design terminal and began working. The other cadets watched as he built a scenario that combined elements they had already seen. Moderate environmental hostility, 12 hours of continuous operation, problem-solving under stress, and simulated combat. It was difficult but not impossible. It was fair. "I have created this test," Greg said carefully. "It is honest. I want to see if other humans can do what Cadet Kim did. Select 3 of them," General Kang instructed. Randomly, a computer algorithm chose 3 names from the 15 humans standing on the floor. Minji Choi was selected. So was a young male named Taeyang Seo, who was only 17 and looked it. He was tall but gangly, not yet grown into his full frame. The third was Hana Yoon, a 24-year-old woman who had been a surveyor on a colony world before joining the military. She was short and stocky, built for zero-gravity work rather than ground combat. The 3 humans looked completely different. Different ages, different builds, different backgrounds. If the test was to prove human capability was standard across their species, this was a good sample. They entered the simulation Grex had designed. The observation deck watched with intense focus. No one was laughing now. They were all learning. The 12-hour test ran. All 3 humans completed it successfully. Their times and performance metrics clustered around what Daehyun had shown. Taeyang was slightly slower in combat but better at puzzle solving. Hana struggled with the climbing sections but excelled in the environmental adaptation portions. Minji was balanced across all categories. None of them quit. None of them panicked. None of them made critical errors that would have killed them in a real situation. When the test ended, the observation deck was silent. The evidence was undeniable. What they had seen from Daehyun was not exceptional. It was normal, standard, average for humans. General Kang walked down from his command platform for the first time. He stepped onto the training floor itself. The assembled cadets, both alien and human, gave him their full attention. "You have been asking the wrong question," he said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet. "You ask, how did humans become strong enough to compete with warrior species? But we never competed on your terms. We do not have to." He activated a holographic display that showed evolutionary data from dozens of worlds. Every species here evolved to dominate their homeworld. Vraxians became apex predators on a high-gravity world with dangerous megafauna. You needed to be fast, strong, and deadly. Torgons developed dense muscle and thick fur to survive frozen worlds and hunt massive prey. Quellans evolved swarm intelligence and rapid reproduction to overcome individual fragility. The display shifted to show Earth. Humans evolved on a Class 3 death world, which you all noted earlier as weak. But Earth has one unique characteristic that your worlds do not. Extreme environmental variability. Images of Earth flashed across the display. Frozen tundra and burning deserts. Humid rainforests and dry plains. High mountains and deep oceans. Stable zones and chaotic storm regions. Earth has every environment, General Kang continued. Our evolution did not optimize us for one environment. It generalized us for all environments. We are not the best at anything, but we can function in everything. Corporal Park stepped forward, adding technical details. Human physiology is remarkable for its inefficiency. We are not the fastest or strongest, but we have the widest operational range of any known biological species. We function from -40 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius, from sea level to 5,000 meters altitude, with minimal training, in 0.3 gravity to 2 gravities, underwater, in deserts, in jungles, in Arctic conditions. Velcora Prime 7 processed this information. Generalist adaptation. You sacrificed peak performance for operational flexibility. Exactly, General Kang confirmed. But there is more. His expression grew serious. Every species here has biological imperatives you cannot override. Vraxians must sleep in deep cycles. Torgons must maintain specific temperature ranges. Synthetic species require energy sources. These are not weaknesses. They are the specialized adaptations that made you dominant on your homeworlds. He paused, looking at each section of cadets. But humans evolved a different survival strategy. We endure. When we encounter an environment that should kill us, we do not flee, we adapt. When we encounter prey we cannot outrun, we do not give up. We follow it for days until it collapses. When we face enemies stronger than us, we do not surrender. We outlast them. He brought up more Earth data, ultramarathons where humans ran for hundreds of kilometers, persistence hunting records from ancient times, survival stories from impossible conditions, military operations in environments that should have been unsurvivable. This is our advantage in warfare, he said, not in single combat where many species surpass us, not in raw strength where we will never match Torgan power, but in sustained operations in hostile environments, in missions requiring days or weeks of continuous pressure. Humans excel because our biology literally evolved for exactly that purpose. Thresikor, who had been silent since his withdrawal from the endurance test, spoke up. I understand now, General. In a battle, in a single fight, Vraxian warriors are superior to humans. But in a war? In a campaign lasting months across varied terrain? He shook his head slowly. We would need supply lines, rest rotations, environmental support systems. Humans just continue. Grex added his own observation. On my homeworld, we have a predator called the Kreshmar. It is not the strongest animal, not the fastest. But once it selects prey, it never stops following, for days, for weeks. The prey runs, hides, fights, but the Kreshmar always comes. Eventually, the prey makes a mistake from exhaustion. He looked at the human cadets with new understanding. Humans are the Kreshmar of the galaxy.